Hello and welcome to the Elephant Podcast. And we are returning to What's Your Magic with Christine Morris. We're continuing that conversation. So hello, Christine. How are you doing today?
Hi, Ayo. I'm smiling because, we've got a lot to say. In conversation, we always have a lot to say. So I'm glad we're recording, and I am looking forward to where this conversation goes. Absolutely.
Yes. So I thought we could start with where we kind of left off about here we have this sense that we have to do something as a whole, as all the group. We need to do something for the weather and the humanity and the transition we're going through, etc. But we really need to think about our own journeys too. So where would you like to go with that?
I mean, I think that is a really wide path you left me, Ayo. It's beautiful. When I talk to folks, especially when I'm working with clients, or even when I'm teaching, I'm talking about we all have a personal mission, and then we've come here for a collective mission too. Not everybody, but those that are working to move the evolutionary lever, that are looking to work with consciousness and that type of thing. And a lot of times our individual path, our individual missions can get overtaken because this collective mission seems so important. But to your point, I think we're not going to be able to actually participate in this collective mission as well unless we really become ensconced in our own personal energy with that connection to our, I'm calling it higher soul now, but people call it higher self. That part of us that actually has all the information that we have come here to work with. And one of the things that people talk about in terms of soul, and there's lots of definitions on soul, we can go into whatever direction you want. But part of what a soul is here to do is to learn about love. I love that one. We're moving through time and space, learning about love on a very simplistic level. That's what our soul is doing. But from especially a Jungian depth psychology perspective or a mythological perspective, we're here to transform in some way in relation with our soul, right? So growing, shifting, changing, evolving, some way, shape, or form. So,
yeah, I mean, I just heard Rick Levine basically say, this is not about transformation, folks. We're not going back. This is about metamorphosis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I liked his little joke about two caterpillars having a conversation, watching a butterfly saying, nope, that's not for me. Nope.
Yeah. Right. And I think to that point, right, that there will people that choose like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's too scary. Right. And so maybe instead of transform, it's transmutate, but we're at a very different point in time than historically has happened. Right. So this is like an evolutionary shift. And from my understanding, all evolutionary shifts start on a nervous system level in all creatures and beings. So, I mean,
well, last year I had a health issue, unexpected, and the doctors could not figure out what the problem was. But it happened on a day when there was a huge solar flare. I mean, off the charts, they called it. And now they're saying, some people in the spirit world areas, they're saying that actually the solar flares are like downloads for us and for the earth. So I sure as anything got a download.
You got a big amount of energy, right? And I wish I had the information right here, but like I just heard last week, one of them, the solar flares, and then the not the coronal mass ejections, but I can't think of the other word, sunspots, solar flares and sunspots. One's magnetic in nature, one's more electric in nature. They're very related, but they're different, right? And we are literally shifting our magnetics in our system, right?
Right.
How we're held, right? Our magnetics hold us in matter. And as we shift these magnetics, it's going to have it impacts our electrical system, which a lot of our functions in our body are on an electrical basis. But our heart is the largest magnetic field in our body.
Right.
5,000 times larger than our brain.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. And I really feel that right now, learning how to work with your heart energy is so important, and learning how to balance it between the head and the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's about integrating that aspect of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, all this electricity going through here, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but you get into the heart, it's just like, boom, you're there.
And you're there and you're connected to both your personalized
Right.
energy field, right? But you're also directly connected to source through there. And that's what our ancient teachings have almost every
Right.
culture has a heart-based center of the human experience. And from a classical tantra, because that's the where I've studied in the Hindu pantheon, the classical tantra, that heart bindu, which is an essence point, subtle energy that creates both the physical and subtle energy field. And then the chakras come out of that, and the development comes out of that. So it's really the origin of everything that we are in matter as we experience all of these different things.
Right. So, I mean, I used to say a prayer for my highest good and the highest good for all. And I'm like, wait a minute. So, why it's like my highest good over here and the highest good for, like, yo, I'm part of that too.
Yep. And I think that's a big thing that women in particular, now I could be wrong, and there's always exceptions, right? But I tell this story. You okay if I tell a little story?
Sure, of course.
So, you've seen this, Federico Fagin, the
Right.
quantum scientist, the quantum physicist who had a spiritual awakening, and he felt it in his heart, right? He felt
Right.
direct experience of unconditional love, and his thought was, "This is me. Unconditional love is me." And then that energy exploded into the room, and he was like, "Oh, this is me also." Right. And
Right.
I've posed this to women, and I'm like, would you have thought of that as me, or would you have thought of that as universal consciousness or something, right? That's not necessarily
Right.
me, right? And there's different levels of me and all of the different pieces. But I think women are taught unconsciously not to put themselves in the equation.
Right. Exactly.
Whereas I think men might have a little bit more training of putting themselves in the equation and being like, wait, I am important. I matter. I'm a key component of this. I'm actually literally a part of this equation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, we all, both women and men, need to shift our awareness and learn how to work together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's no like flipping it like, oh, there's this masculine energy in charge and this power over. So now if we get women up in there in charge, right? No, we need to balance
No.
between the masculine and feminine. That is what we're doing. That is the evolution right there.
Right, exactly. Because otherwise it's back and forth. Okay, now it's the men. Okay, now it's the women. Like, yo, can we stop this and start,
Right.
spiral up together?
Right. Exactly. And what you're talking about, I think we both have heard this term, right? So the this then that, right? This is the polarity universe, which we are heavily steeped in, this polarity universe, right? Good, bad, right, wrong, light, dark. But when we balance those masculine, feminine, when we balance those two qualities, it becomes this new thing, which we've heard the term triality, right? And whatever that new thing is, where it's like the two become a wholeness in itself, that's the evolution, right? That's
Exactly. Exactly. It was interesting because I've challenged myself because I've avoided putting my writing out there. So
yeah.
I decided to join this Readsy competition where they give you prompts, you write about it for a week, you put out a short story that's, between 1 and 3,000 words. And so I wrote about my experience of first going to Bhutan. And one of the things I learned in Bhutan was you do not say no. It's considered impolite to say no or to reject something. So if somebody offers you food, this is what you do, meaning I'm full, you
Mm.
know, but you don't say no.
Got it.
And I realized that in the West, we tend to ask questions that require a yes or no answer,
Mm.
which is very duality based. It's either yes or it's no.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yep.
I mean, it's so,
Yeah.
we lose out on all the nuances between yes and no.
Right. Which as you're saying that, right, that sounds like the relational space in between, right? That's like I can join this or I cannot join this, right? But we're already in a relationship and there's more nuance to it than just the yes and the no.
Right. And Rumi, I can't quote it exactly, but something in the realm between right and wrong, there is a field, meet me there.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And so with all of that, right, it always, especially having the nervous system perspective that I do now as well, like that the yes and no might be like a survival, I belong, I don't belong, right? It might be very basic, but and we are evolving the nervous system. So I don't want to give it like, oh, we stay within this triune brain nervous system.
Right.
That's where it goes, right? And to get to heart energy, you have to be socially engaged. You have to be able to be in relationship with the other person where you feel safe enough, where that's the human biological definition of love and trust as being in safety in relationship, right? It is the human biological experience of that. And so when we can get enough safety in our system, then our own heart energy, right, which is it's magnetic in nature, right? But it also is directly connected to love, directly connected to curiosity,
Right.
directly connected to awe and joy, all of these things. But if there's part of us, especially our physical body is the part that gets into survival mode. Most of society is in survival mode. And we can't just bypass that because the body works unconsciously. It works below the thinking brain. So we're trying to get to thinking brain stuff with like be in the experience of love, but we can't do it from a thinking brain place. We have to feel it
Exactly.
and allow it to expand into our world.
Exactly. And it's really it's very hard to make that transition if you've been so programmed that this is what's going to get you where you want to go.
That's also a survival response, but it's also how we're trained, we're taught to
Exactly.
operate, right? And one of the first things, you probably had this in your and tell me if we shouldn't bring spiritual pieces in it, but I know we're talking about that spiritual. We can just put the word consciousness in place of spiritual and it doesn't,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Please.
But in practices, right, one of the first things they do is have you drop your awareness from your head into your heart, right? And really get familiar with that place. And that can be a really powerful practice. And And I've had people say, like, how do I do that? And like, just imagine you're a small little you and you just let yourself kind of drop down in. But I think we have a fear, humans have an innate fear of like, oh my God, we're descending into something unfamiliar. We're descending into a place that doesn't have a lot of light in it that I can see right now, right? It's just unfamiliar. The lights aren't on. It's a room that's been empty for a long time and I don't know what's down there, kind of thing.
Exactly. And yet, once you are able to do it, it's like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to keep doing this.
Yeah. And you know what? That I think, like that being said, right? So I'm going to go against myself right now. I think a lot of us that are on the leading edge of this frothy edge of evolution, right? Because it is frothy and misty and kind of don't know exactly where we're going, but a lot of us have a feel. But I think a lot of us have had that heart energy on, but we've just had to kind of cloak it. And if we talked about this last time, you have to take me in a different direction. But we've had to kind of put it under spies is too strong a word, but right, kind of be cloaked because it's not been safe to be in that space, right? So when people talk about learning to become empathetic or empathic or learning to be vulnerable, I'm like, that stuff has been like on the sleeve, and I've actually been kind of a weirdo for it my whole life. And
Right.
and so now like coming into it with a voice and being like, no, this is actually what humanity needs, and I like operating from this place, and let me show you what this feels like, right? Or however it is that I just want to point out that I think a lot, and I suspect a lot of your listeners will have that thing that heart energy is on, but it's confusing because society is saying we need to be doing things from this other place, and like their whole system is not designed to operate in that fashion.
And not anymore, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah,
Not anymore, for sure.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's interesting because I'm uh, have this group of high school friends who have gotten together, and we're working on writing about our lives together, And I realize the one thing they don't know, they've always thought of me as being weird, but what they don't know is what that journey was.
Mhm.
They know the jobs I had. They know I have a family. They know I have two daughters and all that stuff. The stuff that you put on Facebook or whatever is you know, but they have no idea what my journey was. And I've decided, okay, enough hiding. I just have to, write about the part that they don't know, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And how is that? Does it like as you're writing and as you're in the active experience of creation, does the fear of being, like this hiding piece, is that not as present, right? Like the creation is stronger than the fear.
Oh, it's like, okay, it's time for freedom. you know, I
Yeah.
want to spread my wings. It
Yeah. I feel that.
takes so much energy to hide that part of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you feel, right? Like that the collective is high. I mean, it's been high enough to be out a little bit
Exactly.
more, but it's even more okay now, right? You can feel that. I can only imagine because we have a little bit of differences in our age. It was hard enough for me, and I can only imagine the forerunner
Yeah.
to my generation, right? Really, really challenging. Not a lot of support, right? Definitely not in the generational way that people have come through. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see that these kind of conversations are possible now without people, like, oh, I think we better send the man in the white coat to get her.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a big collective fear of those of us who have like lifetime after lifetime tried to bring these kind of ways of being into the world and have literally have the soul wound or scar from being extracted from society and being like, that's, that's bad, which is how we learn as humans, like what we can bring to the world and what we can't bring to the world. So we've got a lot of these teachings in us, or these ways of being in us, like held in the closets, in the shadow, in the closets, in the basement, like, and not even as detrimental shadow. That's too strong a word, right? But shadow is often unconscious, but these are like conscious things we've held in
exactly
in the closets, right? And so I heard somebody talking about this. It was somebody from the LGBTQIA plus community talking about, you all think that it's just us in this community. It might have been a trans person saying that we need to come out, that we're the only ones that come out of a closet. Everybody has a closet.
Right. Exactly.
Everybody has a closet that they're coming. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm coming out of the closet.
I fully support that. I celebrate that over here, right? Because as you come out of the closet, it makes it easier for me to come out of the closet, especially since you're my elder, right? And you are a person that I look to for the wisdom of places that I'm not quite there yet. So
Right.
it's actually really helpful for my system right here, right now, to hear that, right? It really, especially a woman. I mean, it really is. And I think that's part of the beauty of these conversations that you're creating, that people can just relate to that feel of what's needed to help, like find your magic, right? And the magic doesn't have to be this huge
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. It's in your heart. It's there. Everybody has it.
Yep.
Everybody has it.
And it can be the very simple expression of, tending. We might have talked about this last time too, like tending a garden, or making beautiful meals, or greeting people in the market, with smiles and with love, right? Because it is like all of us have a way of expressing love that helps it grow on the planet. Like that's one of the pieces, like we're talking about, like, what's your magic? That's like foundational baseline. It's in that category of love and connection and all of the things that stem from that.
Exactly. So, I mean, my real breakthrough actually was in Bhutan because I was with total strangers speaking a language I had never heard. And it's the first night we're sitting around the Bukhari, and they're giving me a cup of yak butter tea, which I had never had. Quite an experience. And they're laughing, and it's very possible they're laughing at me because I'm strange to them. But I didn't feel that kind of protective, oh God, they're laughing at me. I was I can't explain it. I felt happy, like that's fine.
Mm.
It's fine. There's a certain freedom, I think, if you're with people who have no idea who you are, what you do, the world you're living in. So you're just a human being.
Hmm. Yeah, and there had to be cues that you were receiving that it was safe enough. Like even if you felt like that there was some kind of entertainment that you were provided, you
Which
right,
was fine, good. It's making them laugh. That's good.
right. But it's
Laughter is good.
Yeah, but it's not at your expense, right? So you were still included in some kind of way that you felt included enough, right? That you were just humans being together. And because your existence wasn't dependent on their full acceptance of you, you could be
Right.
more you, honestly. And
Right.
and so then as you're being more you, even if you're being awkward and not doing the things the way that they're used to seeing things being done, right? There is this resonant connection of, like you're saying, human to human, which is heart to heart, which is this energy of connection, and it can be construed even in greater and greater positive experiences of it. But connection is the very necessary component to feel that we can.
And that's there. It's
That's
it's at the heart level.
that's the only way. Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I you may have heard me tell this story, but I was on a bus once and there was a man with his little daughter, and it was, summertime, very bright. I had sunglasses on. He had two sunglasses tucked into his shirt, the father. And the girl looked at me and we started communicating without saying anything.
Mm,
We absolutely connected. And she pointed like this and pointed to her father so I could see. And so I was like, "You have two, I only have one." Then she pointed to her sister, who was sitting with her mother. And we were laughing. We
mm.
weren't speaking. We just connected.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
And
it
that's
was magical. It
yeah.
really was.
So that's a really interesting piece, right? So that's a strong connection of the non-physical energy, right? Non-verbal, because we're picking up on visual cues,
Right.
but there's a lot of like that heart energy, and we all have the way that we receive non-physical. It's non-physical, not just non-verbal, non-physical
Right.
and so and kids are so cool because they're just clear and pure. And so you feel that
Right.
energy and it's very easy to tune in and understand.
So she pointed like this, and I knew she wanted me to take the glasses off, and I did. And so she wanted to see my eyes, which, of course, that contact is, you know, it really goes to the heart.
I mean, it literally does from a
Yes.
biological perspective, right? Social engagement is heart and up biology. And so our facial gestures and especially our eyes have a way of signaling to other biological systems
Right.
what's like where we're connected and if we're mad, if we're
Exactly.
happy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was brilliant. And what a beautiful way to be with another human being, right?
And I've walked down the street and sometimes, little kids, tiny kids, and they would suddenly look at me and just like this big smile on their face. It's like they recognize something, a connection. They feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're more clear than a lot of older people, right? And that clear just means that you've got a more clear connection with that heart energy. That heart energy is you. It's
Right.
the essence nature of you, right? And
Exactly.
then the frequencies are stepped down like octaves, right? From our essence nature to our soul. We have to travel through time and space with something, right? And so that's the soul, which has the different configurations, right? And then it's stepped down until it gets into our physical body. And different ways of talking about consciousness will tune into different parts of these octaves of frequency, right?
Right.
But you've got a more clear connection between like the luminary threads between these different parts
Exactly.
of Io are more connected than a lot of folks, and babies have a more clear connection and they can feel that.
Yeah, before they've been programmed or deprogrammed or whatever you want to call it.
I mean that's really a good point because the remembering of our magic, of our essence, of our consciousness is really it's always there. It's pulling off and what's not us, giving it back, and then us is allowed to be more present.
Well, one thing I realized is, we have the ego, and I see the ego as like the cocoon that the caterpillar goes into. We need it to deal with this world, but we don't want it to be so thick that we can't get out of it.
Or we
Eh,
can't hear in through it. Right.
right. But what I think is, however we define it, if somebody said, give me a phrase or a simple sentence to describe yourself, that's what your ego attaches to.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's like, it's great because it makes it safe for you to be in this world because you can say, this is who I am, this is what I am. Um, but it also can be a barrier to really connecting with your magic, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it can be it's often what other people have told us that we are.
Yeah,
And we turn and project that back out into the world. But it's really meant to be as a focusing tool, right?
exactly. I mean, I used to think, okay, I call it the Atlas syndrome. Like, I'm responsible for everybody. I'm responsible for the whole world. Like, really, Io? Where did that come from? Um, and it really was hard to let go of that because that was my stable thing that kept me going in this world.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's responsible. I'm like, wait a minute, no.
Right. Right. The overdeveloped responsibility gene, right?
Right.
And that's actually, I mean, part of it is a strong ego, and part of it is like, I've got to take care of everybody else besides myself, right? Because and I have that too. I've worked with it. I'm not saying it's totally gone, but I've worked with it. But like thinking that I could actually, there's what, over 8 billion people on the planet, that I can actually make a difference, but I can. But it's
Right.
not everybody. It's with the world that I live in and how that ripples out into the rest of the world, which you
Exactly.
and did we talk about that last time where you like, I can't wipe everybody's tears. This was you receiving the
Right.
message, but I
Yeah,
can.
that was the message from Krishna, who, he passed away 6 years ago, but he's still very much in touch with me and helping me out in a lot of ways. And what he said was, because he knows me, something happens, I want to help. And he said, you cannot wipe the tears of everyone. You can only wipe the tears of one person. Just do what you can do. And I keep that in mind because, with so much going on in the world where so many people are suffering, it's really hard. And I just like remind myself, send love and do what you can do.
Yeah. I mean, that is so important, right? Because that keeps us in the equation, right?
Right.
What can I do? What's my impulse to do? What resources do I have to offer?
Right.
So there might be very practical things, right? You've got a lot of skills in terms of emergency situations if needed, right? But in the general scheme of things, we have the resources, but also we can just ask for, you know, help to be sent, love to be sent, support to be
Right.
sent, right? Because we are in the equation, but we are not the sole responsibility of the equation.
Exactly. But also, one thing he keeps telling me is work smart, not hard. I just like it's taken me a long time to figure that one out, but I'm finally learning. It's
Yeah.
like it's not about me. I'm not the one that's, controlling this or anything. Like, how can we work together? It's collaboration, you know.
And that's a
Work.
skill, right? You've developed that skill of collaborate. We were just talking about this morning about like like creating networks and being in connection. And I think some families and some people are more skilled with it than others. And some people have to learn more, right? Because there's more survival stress in their family systems that they don't feel safe enough to reach out and ask for help. Or we're taught that, this mentality, especially in the West, especially in the US, that we're supposed to be these independent, pull yourself up by the bootstraps beings that aren't supposed to rely on anybody else, right? And we have the old cowboy myth, all the things, but that's not reality. That's not how humans survive. We survive in connection and collaboration. We evolve through cooperation. That Darwin was flat out wrong. Well, maybe he didn't even say it that right, but we evolve through cooperation and connection, not through the survival of the fittest. That is a false narrative.
Right. Exactly. And it's, well, it's a process letting go of, it reminds me actually of from working with the scientists in Memorial Sloan Kettering, because, somebody would work so hard to prove this theory and he'd get it and then it would be accepted. And then somebody else would come along and say, wait a minute. You didn't consider this and you didn't consider that. And, you need to look at it broader.
That's brilliant though, right? Because it takes many, many different perspectives, right? To be able to hold the bigger picture. And that goes right back to your elephant of the elephant podcast. Like everybody's touching a part of the elephant, but nobody can see the whole big piece. And so that's why part of the reason why it's super important to connect and collaborate with folks, but it doesn't have to be people that have some sort of connection to the vision that you have or that heart energy that you have.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things to say to people, like, okay, here's what this elephant thing is like where I am. How about if we ask, what's it like for you? Then we have a better idea of what this elephant is.
Yeah. And so then there's valuing other people's perspective without it diminishing ours, right? So we always think that there's a zero-sum game, like that. And it's we're actually better if we get more information and more hearts and more minds involved, right? It gives us a wider perspective. The wider our perspective, the more inclusive it is.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Try something. Anyway, so I, of course, have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and we will continue it. It's wonderful having you and I collaborated together on this conversation. And so I think together we should ask our audience, what's your magic?
What lights up your heart?
Exactly.
That's the way in.
Yes.
And this conversation lights up my heart. I love talking with high-minded concepts with people. So thank you so much for having me back.
To be continued. Thank you so much, Christine.
You're very welcome. See you next time.
Take care.